Hey, I am Meg Church, and I want to welcome you to the Breakthrough series. And today I'm so excited to have Trezanay on here, and I'm going to welcome her in just a second. But before I get started, you might be like, who is Meg? I don't know who this girl is. Basically, I'm a self-sabotage coach and relationship repair coach, so I help you get out of your own way. So I love to have people on here who have been through battles, who've learned to break up with the inner bully and share with me and with the world who they've become and who they're becoming. I think it's super inspirational to see the process because there is no such thing as overnight success. So I'm having people on here that are amazing to share their stories. So please welcome Trezanay.
Hello.
So let's hear it. Who are you? What do you do? And then let's get into your battles.
Okay, so my name is Trezanay. I do a lot of things. I'm a dual career person. So my primary profession, I teach special education 10th grade English at a local high school here. It's considered a minority majority high school, actually, because the population is largely Black and brown. So it's one of the largest in the city for sure. So I teach special ed English. And then when I come home, I practice law. I do intellectual property law and business law for creators and entrepreneurs and innovators to make sure that they own what it is that they are creating, because that's where wealth and legacy reside, where the legacy resides, where the legacy resides. I couldn't get that in, but close. So yeah, that's what I do in my day job. I'm a mom. I have a 19-year-old college sophomore, and I have a 10-year-old. So managing that at the same time.
You're busy.
Yes, overly busy.
Well, I wanted to also share how we met. My girl Michaela, she put on an event called Minding My Business Brunch, and you're a fellow speaker, and we didn't get a chance to really chat that much during the event. So I was like, I'm having people on here so I can connect more and have one-on-one time. So it's kind of half sharing you with the world and half getting to connect with you too. So
yes.
This is so much fun. And you killed it on stage. It was so inspiring to hear part of your story. So I'm ready for you to share more.
Yes.
So I want you to go into some of the battles that you face, whatever you want to share.
Okay, sure. So I think the shortest way to explain my battles is let's see, what year are we in? 2021? So almost 10 years ago, I actually was just an attorney and lost both of my law licenses for engaging in what we call professional misconduct. And so I lost both of my law licenses. And that instance was it was terrible. It was a very public suspension for one license, a disbarment for the other license.
Wow.
Because I engaged in criminal conduct. And when it all happened, it was a shock to everyone of how in the world could Trezanay have done something like this? I was valedictorian of my high school class. I graduated, top 5% of my class in college, particularly in my department. Went to law school, was top 20% of the class. I had a really great job offer. Like, all of my life had all of this high achievement, always getting all the awards. You always won everything. You got first place in everything. And then all of a sudden we find Trezanay in the newspaper and she's done this. And so for me, that was the pinnacle of the war with self. That something like that happens, because when you have trained all of your entire life for a particular profession and then you're stripped from it, you are literally left with just you.
Yep.
And so what I found was the overarching war was mistaken identity of self. And so my battle was literally a false identity and then trying to figure out who the true Trezanay was. And so it took a lot of work to figure out who's Trezanay absent a professional identity, because your profession is not who you are.
Amen. Yep.
Is not who you are. And in that time of working with professionals and self-reflection and a lot of hard work, discovered that I had a false identity that was wreaking havoc in all of my life, not just professionally. It was wreaking havoc in my entire life, which was causing me to make personal decisions that were bad. which led me to do a criminal act.
Mm-hmm.
It was not just a criminal act. It was, you were all over the place, Trezanay, and it is because there was a hole in your soul.
Mm.
And the hole in your soul came from childhood trauma. I'll never forget the day that I actually had to meet with a counselor because my criminal lawyer said, you need to meet with a counselor because I have to figure out what's wrong with you. Why did you do this? Right? And I'll never forget the first conversation I had with this counselor. And she was asking me questions about my mom and asking me questions about my dad. And I was like, lady, what is wrong with you? Like, I am facing suspension. I can go to jail. And you're asking my mom and dad. I'll never forget it. And I remember her asking these questions and I'm answering. She said, oh, okay, so we have abandonment. And I was like, girl, what are you talking about? Like, I stole money. Why are you asking me about my childhood and talking about abandonment? Why are you making all these notes?
Right.
Lady, you're crazy. Okay, I'm gonna stop talking to you because my lawyer told me to, but okay, you're crazy.
That's the only reason.
But lo and behold, when I discovered over time, and over time, you're talking from 2013 to 2018, 2019, over that time of learning that when a parent decides to leave you, it creates a hole. Okay, so in my particular situation, I had a whole family. We lived in a military lifestyle. And so my father actually became permanently disabled and was discharged from the military. And so we abruptly left military life and came into civilian life. And then he decided to leave us. Wow. And so when he left us, that was physical abandonment. That was emotional abandonment. And since he was the breadwinner, that was financial abandonment.
Right.
Okay. At the same time, you're also leaving my mom. So my mom is experiencing emotional abandonment, financial abandonment, all of the abandonments. And in her trying to process what's happening, she checked out on me and my brother. So I'm getting emotional abandonment from my other parent as well. So I have all of these things going on. And trust me, y'all, I did not discover this in one counseling session. Okay, so I need y'all to know that this is like 7 years of sessions, 7 years of hard work, of reflection. And I discovered that at that time, I was 14, that I stopped being myself at that time. And literally created a different self to protect me from what was happening.
Wow.
And that person is what created havoc all the way until I lost those licenses and had to be forced to deal with, girl, what?
So how long were you living as the other person? How many years? So
from 14 until, so I'll say until the day that, I disclosed my theft. Because I was actually treasurer of a bar association.
Okay.
And so it was considered theft. Embezzlement, but it's theft. And so you're talking from age 14 until age 31.
Okay.
The reason why it took so long, though, for it to get like that is my chosen coping mechanism of dealing with life being out of control was to be control freak.
Yes.
So it took me from being a very gifted kid to be an overachieving control freak. So no one knew what I was going through because the outcomes of how I chose to cope with it was straight A's. You work 2 jobs, you're playing on every single athletic team you can get on. You're in every single program, you're doing all these things. So everyone thinks you're doing just fine. So you're pouring yourself in overachieving. The problem is once I got into adult life, real adult life, those mechanisms don't work anymore. You have to be highly relational for life to work. And so I never had really good relationships, romantic or otherwise. I was highly detached from my own emotions. So one of the ways I coped was to completely numb so that I wouldn't feel anything And so when you detach yourself from your own emotions, you don't feel your own feelings, and you also don't feel the feelings of others.
So can I ask you, and you can share or not, since I love self-sabotage, what was your numbing mechanism?
It was to literally discard the weight or value of other people's feelings.
Okay.
So you would discard how other people felt, and as well as yourself.
Mm-hmm.
So you could feel something and you would immediately push it aside by going to overachieve.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So if I go to school all day but I join the volleyball team, then I don't have to go home and deal with home.
Mm-hmm.
And then if I also get a job, so I'm going to school all day from 7 to 2, and then I go to practice, then I go to work till 9 or 10. I come home, everybody sleep, do my chores, do my homework, go to bed, 2 in the morning, because I'm valedictorian, so I got to get all this work done. It's 2 in the morning. And then you get back up at 6 and do it all over again, over and over and over. So you're not forced to feel a thing.
Yeah.
But you can't do that.
And I think that what you're saying is, like, I think to some people, they would almost be like, man, I wish I had that form. I wish I had that form. Because for people that are numbing with alcohol or sex or, relationships or whatever, but even though you're still achieving something that still broke you down,
it's
still caught up with you. And it's still like, I didn't experience the same exact thing that you did, but I definitely had that, I'll just outwork my problems. I'll just outwork the pain that I'm feeling. I'll just keep going. And then, I won't have to devote any of my life to that part. We'll just put that in the road.
Right. That's exactly right. At the same time this is happening, I'm discovering that because I'm a high achiever, people let you break rules.
Yep.
So you have this narcissistic ego thing also building in this false identity. Right? There are so many times I did stuff in high school that I should have gotten in trouble for, but no, we have a Black Valentine. This shit, right? And so you have this monster being created, someone who isn't feeling their own feelings, devalues other people's feelings, and at the same time feels entitled to break rules. Crazy. And so it's a whole monster. And the problem is you get an adult life, you turn 18. So if you aren't able to feel or even be vulnerable with your feelings, right? Because if you don't think you have feelings, then you're never going to be vulnerable. You can't build relationships with people.
Nope.
They're way over there. And at the same time, you're just creating ways where you're constantly violating the boundaries of others.
Yep.
Because if you feel that you're entitled because you're a high achiever, you're going to violate other people's boundaries. That's laws, that's personal boundaries. I also discovered that I didn't even have my own personal boundaries, because why would you even think that you needed boundaries if you were that kind of person? So this whole, she was a monster, and it was wreaking havoc in my own life. And no one was really pulling my coattails to make me really look at some of the things that were happening in my personal life to show, like, yeah, you're achieving over here, but you kind of see your personal life is kind of crazy. I had my first child at 19, right? Yep. And could not really manage the relationship with my child's father because can't relate to others.
Yep.
At the same time, there's detachment with my own child. No one's pulling my coattails. I'm just moving along.
Because your life's all put together.
Huh?
Because your life's all put together. It looks like
it's all put together. Oh yeah, I made this mistake. Don't worry, I'm still the same high achieving Trezanay. I'll make it through this. The problem is that I repeated that 10 years later. The same thing. And the problem is now you're 10 years older and now you have real adult issues, right? Like you have to make a living. You're not in school anymore. I was in school when I had my daughter. So financial aid to make it through, and you're still pressing forward academically, to really be successful there. But when it repeated itself, it was different this time. This time I had just left my 6-figure job to start my own practice, and I ended up getting pregnant again. And I'm like, I'll just push through this one like I did the last.
Been there before.
Been there before. What I did before worked. I didn't deal with what was happening inside of me that led me to have another child outside of the bounds of marriage, or even a committed relationship, if we're just being transparent and honest here, right? You're not dealing with, how did I get here again? Do you remember how hard it was last time? Do you remember the implications of working inside of a church, like being in ministry when this happened the first time? No, but you didn't deal with it then. You just pushed through.
Yep.
And so you tried to do that this time. And it didn't work because you have no financial aid to lean on now. Now you got 2 kids to take care of now. And you have this fresh new practice that you started. And because you do not value your own feelings, you are not sitting and thinking about what is happening. Because in hindsight, I should have been like, I need to shut down this practice. I need to go find a job. I need to rethink the plan that I had because I was dumb enough to get myself in this situation. It happened because, again, ego's like, oh no, you cannot quit now.
Here,
I put myself up here. You quit this job. You told everybody you were going to start your own practice and be amazing. Like, oh no, you can't ask for any help. And even if you wanted to, who do you have a relationship with that you can be vulnerable enough with to tell them that I screwed up and I need your help? That false self was like, no, honey, we're going to push through this. And here comes depression, and here comes isolation, and here comes all of these negative experiences, because false self builds that environment for that to happen.
Yep.
And so in that place of, because trust me, you're not in your right mind.
No.
When you are in this kind of cognitive space. I chose to steal. Now, did I think of it as stealing? No, I did not. Was not in my right mind at all. Right mind, wrong mind was like, you're just borrowing for this moment because you're going to push through.
Yep.
You push through all the time, Trezanay. You are a great push througher. You always come out victorious on the end. Just go ahead and borrow this, because you'll push through, you'll put it back, be all gravy. Guess what? That's exactly what I did. I borrowed to push through because I had no income coming in my practice, because I'm raising this baby and I have my 10-year-old daughter at the same time. It is all bad. And so I'm stealing money to pay light bills, water bills. My water got cut off. Like, listen, when your water gets cut off, listen, baby, that's bad. It's one thing for you not to pay your car note. It's another thing when, you're like, man, we don't have no food, but your water gets cut off. And you are literally getting jugs of water to flush toilets. It was so bad, Meg. Am I acknowledging how bad it is? Oh, no.
You're pushing through.
You cannot acknowledge how bad something is when you are that detached from self and your own feelings. Yeah. It's just like, it's like a fact on a piece of paper, but you're not really actually valuing or really weighing what that is. It was so bad. I'm literally taking money to pay basic necessities. That's what's happening. And so did I push through? Absolutely. I absolutely pushed through. A year later, I got that practice back up and running. I was doing conferences. I was doing all kinds of things to get money in, and I was putting that money back. I absolutely was. Problem is that we were at the end of our terms as officers, and it was time to switch officers. Okay. Now, false self is still reigning, people. Please don't think she's dead. She is alive and kicking. And he says, I don't have to be treasurer anymore. Everybody wants me to be president now. I'll be president of the bar. So I'm laughing because it's ridiculous. And I literally say, that's fine. I will transition out of treasurer to become president-elect of this bar association. Okay. No one has said they want to be treasurer. Great. I'll do both. Okay. Because I still got about $2,000 to put back. The organization sends me to a conference for bar presidents. So it's a major conference in Chicago sponsored by the American Bar Association. And I go on behalf of our bar to prepare me to be president. Okay. I'm there and I'm doing, talking. I'm a great speaker. I'm just talking and I'm shaking and making, connections. And the last day of the conference, I mean, the last day, we had this plenary session where everyone had to come with some session for everyone. And this man gets up there and he's like one of the best crisis managers in the country. And he starts talking about how to manage crisis when you're a bar president. I'm like, oh, this is good. And he literally puts up on the slide in the back how to handle embezzlement as a bar president.
Oh, no.
And that was the first time I was hit with the true weight of what I had done.
Mm-hmm. Man.
And I texted the bar president at that time, that moment, and said, I need to talk to you. Will you be available at this time?
Wow.
It's like I knew what I was doing. I didn't realize the position I put my bar president in, who I consider to be a friend.
Mm-hmm.
Like, oh my God. Oh my God, like this is criminal activity. Now, mind you, it still hasn't crossed my mind that I violated bar rules.
Right.
Because trust me, when you are that detached from self, you are not appreciating the full complexity of, you just haven't. Like it's literally, you're peeling it back layer by layer, really understanding what you have done. But that moment, I was like, I put my friend in a bad position. That's as far as I had gone.
Mm-hmm.
My analysis of what I had done. And I share that because that is how removed you can become from a situation when you aren't attached to your feelings. You're not attached to self. Anyway, so I ended up texting my best friend and said, I can't tell you what's going on right now, but I need you to pray. I just need you to pray. Can't tell you what it is. She's my closest friend. And I said, I just need you to pray. And I said, I'm going to call you. I'm probably going to be crying, but I just need you to pray. So I called the bar president and I tell her, you know, what happened. And I remember her going, oh my God, Trezanay, this is bad. And I said, I know. But when I look back, I had no idea.
Right.
How bad it was. And so, you know, she asked me, you know, when I could pay it back. And, you know, I shared, you know, I've already put a third back. I have another third in my savings account. And I need about 30 to 60 days to get you the last third. And she said, okay. And she said, I'll call you back. And so that's when I called my friend and I tell her everything. And I remember what my best friend said. And it wasn't that I knew everything was going to be okay, but it's like I had this sense that this was actually the beginning of something that wouldn't destroy me.
Yep.
And she said, I went to pray and I saw the word embezzlement come before my eyes as I prayed. And I knew then, I was like, God knew this was going to happen. And if you just allow him to do his thing, you'll be all right. You'll be all right. And so long story short, I ended up having to resign and do all these things. And you know, the board, you know, voted for my suspension of my license, or to basically report me to the bar. And that's when I realized, oh my God, oh my God, I'm going to lose my law license. I've been wanting to be a lawyer since I was in second grade. It's the only goal I've ever had.
Yep.
It's about to be gone. And so after a year, I lost my license for 2 years. And had to start the grieving process, if you will, of something like that. And coming to grips with, well, if you can't be a lawyer anymore, then what do you do?
Yep.
And so the process from then to now is discovering who I am, absent a profession. And what I learned in that time is you really need to discover your authentic self by sitting with self.
It's hard.
It's hard.
So hard.
So stop doing something.
Yeah.
Can you stop doing something? Oh my God, Meg, let me say something. Stop doing something. It took so long to just not do anything. I still struggle with it just a little bit. But I can always tell when I've been doing too much because I feel uncentered.
Yep.
And so I had to learn to stop doing stuff so that I don't sit with self. And in that 7 years from the day I disclosed until I decided to get my license back, was paying attention to the world around me, which I wasn't doing before. and seeing how I'm contributing to the world around me. So it made me learn how to relate to others. How am I contributing to the lives of others? So now false identity is dying every day, because it's not how do I serve you, but how do I serve other people? And that's when I discovered, oh my God, if I had been paying attention, I have a gift to teach.
Yeah.
If I had been paying attention in church when they kept asking me to teach Sunday school, but I'm like, nah, okay, I'm good, fam.
Yeah.
If I had been paying attention to when I did get up to speak and people are like, no one's ever explained it to me that way, and I got it, then I would have seen it then. But false self was not allowing me to see any of that. Like, nah, we're gonna be a great lawyer. We're gonna do this, we're gonna do that, we're gonna have the best firm. You're not seeing, and even in being a lawyer, I was tutoring people to pass the bar exam. I had a 100% pass rate with all of my students. They have taken it 4 or 5 times. They meet with me for less than 5 hours and they pass the first time.
Man.
How come it's never clicking that you have to teach? Well, it's because you were blind.
Yep.
And so getting through that, it did take professional counseling. And I do not want to gloss over that it's professional counseling with someone who had 30 years in the game of counseling, particularly working with people who had addictive-like behaviors, which is exactly what I was doing. I had an addiction, but it wasn't to a drug, like you mentioned, sex or drugs or anything like that. It was literally to doing something to avoid feeling. And so working with someone to really process through the trauma that I went through as a kid, because it was just wreaking havoc all over the place. So I don't want people to think that I just read some self-help books and was going to church and watching some preaching videos. No, that I had a professional who I still meet with to this day. Because I've learned that once you come out of something like that and you do process like, oh God, these things happened and here's what it looks like when I'm going through my bad cycle. Here's the new thoughts I have to think. That don't default, that I'm learning that when you enter into a new arena in your new life, you need somebody to help you navigate that arena, because if you don't, you're going to end up doing the same default behaviors that you did before. So I still meet with her. So please know that it wasn't just self-help. It was working with a professional.
Well, and I think that's also a great thing, though, that you said that, because literally professional help like that gets a bad rap.
Yes.
A lot of times. Now, I'm not saying all professional help is always the same level. You know, you got to find something that works with you, but it literally was allowing you to break up with that bully, to strip back the layers that would have led to even more destruction. Like that's the piece that I think that people don't always realize. We ask, why me? I'm sure you asked it too. Why me? Why me? Why are you doing this? But it's so much better when you're living with a strong foundation of who you are, so you can truly connect with people and God can work through you. He can't work through you when you're doing that stuff. It's a whole lot harder because it's not the route he wants you to go.
You cannot. You know, it's so funny. It's like there were many things that were working for me. And then there were so many things where I felt like I was stuck. And people would say, well, you're just getting in your own way. And I'd be like, well, that's not possible. Because I'm Trezanay and I'm a great achiever and I always win. So it can't be me.
Right.
It absolutely was. I look back and I'm like, all of the places where I was successful, but it wasn't like super major. It is because I was out of touch with self and I wasn't relational. So yes, I'm back practicing. Yay. And I'm not doing a single thing different, Meg. I'm still using the same things I did before, the same knowledge I had before. The only difference is me. And I see it making an incredible impact. I mean, my revenue is much more than it ever was, you know, before. And it is because now I'm in touch with self. And I actually don't devalue people in front of me anymore. So there's this empathy that wasn't there before. I can see beyond myself now. I can see other people. And at the same time, not being condescending. So there's no way in the world that you can be entitled and not be condescending, that you can be narcissistic and not condescending.
Well, so with you teaching, that's the perfect way. You can't be a condescending teacher. Like,
you cannot.
God was like, Yo, I'm gonna make you do this. I'm gonna put you to make.
I would not wish what I've gone through on anyone. It was a very public loss of license, very public. I don't wish that on anyone. But when I do look back in hindsight, I'm like, God, you knew exactly what I needed to not only be made whole from what my parents were not able to give me. Because I think sometimes, you're like, oh, my parents didn't do this. They weren't able. My father did 2 tours in the Gulf War and came back both mentally and physically disabled. And I recognize that my father deciding to leave us was him making the most intelligent decision he could make to save himself.
Yeah.
And then I recognize that my mother tapping out was her doing what she needed to do to just continue pushing through. But I also learned that I still got the hard work to feel that whole of things they just weren't able to give me at that time. And so that has been the biggest component. But I can't be a great teacher if I don't have those holes filled. I recognize that even in my classroom, empathy, grace, and accountability, they are a daily thing in my classroom. Completely understand what happened in your home, student, right? Let's talk about it. Let's get it off your chest. I can recognize the signs of trauma because I've done this hard work. And so there's grace in my classroom, but at the same time, accountability, because I recognize that one of the things that I wasn't getting in that time of false self was accountability from people. And that's what allowed that monster to keep growing. So in my classroom, the monster doesn't get to keep growing in here.
Well, but also with you continuing to meet with your therapist, counselor, psychiatrist, whichever they go by, that's another. I feel like when people struggle with things, like you said, sometimes they're like, I'm good. I don't need to do that anymore. Or like, I don't need to go to church anymore. I went one time. No, you got to keep showing up and keep getting filled up, or keep making sure you have that accountability so you're staying on the right track.
Yes.
That's awesome.
I just find that to be incredibly, now I see her more during COVID than I did before, because I'm like, teaching in this environment has been so crazy.
Oh, I can't.
But yeah, you got to keep going. I think sometimes people think that they are self-sufficient, that I have it all. And I'm like, how arrogant.
No. Yeah.
Right? No. How arrogant to think that it's like when people say, I don't need a preacher to preach God to me. I can know for God for myself. Like, it's kind of their job to spend time in scripture. So if they get to spend 40 hours a week in scripture, but you have another job and you only get to maybe do 5, it's kind of arrogant to think that they can't teach you something.
Don't call you that, So what would you like to leave people with? Like some words of wisdom / I
would say that to pay attention to the choices you're making and the feelings that you're feeling both before and after, because they're telling you something. And it's the opportunity to make changes on your own before life comes in like a flood and really drops you to make those changes. Because they're all directing you to become the best version of yourself. And I feel that's what this battle that I had has taught me, is there was a version of you that needed to come out and you were not allowing her. And now that I'm here, it has been so wonderful. It has been so wonderful. Here comes the tears. It has been so wonderful to be whole.
Yes.
And you don't know how unwhole you are until you are whole.
Yep.
I see it in my children. They have been the exhibit A of how whole I have become, particularly my daughter. Because you have to remember, people, that while I'm going through this, my children are going through this, and mostly my daughter, because she was older.
Right.
So from age 12 up, she's having to have the impact of us losing everything. We have no car. We have no house. We have nothing. And she had to live through that. And so I am not only having to do the work on self still, but my parenting has to continue. Not as if parenting doesn't continue when your children
Right.
leave the house, but my parenting is double
Mm-hmm.
because I have to parent my now adult child at a distance
Mm-hmm.
while filling the hole that I left while I was trying to fill my own hole. Does that make sense?
It's 100%.
And so there's just a different joy and happiness in the whole true authentic self that never existed before. There's stuff I'm still discovering about Trezanay that I forgot about when Trezanay died at age 14. Back in the back in my house, you can't see it, I've pulled out my 88 key full piano keyboard because 12-year-old Trezanay played piano. When family fell apart, she stopped. And so I'm like, what happened? Like, I loved playing the piano. So I'm like, that part is coming back out now. Let's rediscover that part and that joy. So if you ever had a traumatic event, I just implore you, I beg you to go try to remember who you were before that. Because there's so much joy in that person. And I'm sure you have moved it to the side just to survive and push through. And I'm not telling you that that's bad because you made a choice to just survive. But go discover those things that you push to the side. There's so much joy and happiness
there. Do you want to let them know how they could reach you or?
Oh, yeah. So I'm always on Twitter at Trezanay. So at TREZANAY. I'm sometimes on Instagram. I'm more of a lurker there. I post maybe once every 2 months, but I'm at Trezanay over there as well. My law practice is choosetma.com. Like I said, I work with creators, innovators, and entrepreneurs with their intellectual property. So that's like trademark, copyrights, anything that protects the creations that you've made, and then also your business. So making sure that your business infrastructure is straight. And occasionally helping you when someone decides to come for your business with a lawsuit. And so yeah, mostly on Twitter. I'm on Facebook. I'm only on Facebook for church. Okay, so if you try to reach out to me at Facebook, it might be a while. But Twitter, instantaneous. And my email address is tm as in Michelle tmalaw.llc@gmail.com.
Thank you so much for coming on. Your energy and your vulnerability is contagious, and I hope that it helps inspire that little bit of hope in someone else. That's always what I want to kind of get across, that no matter what you've been through, you can still become, you can still break up.
Yes.
Those battles are there for a reason, even when you don't see it, even when you're questioning everything and wondering why you're going through it. It's always a boot camp that God's putting you through to get to that other side. So I appreciate your vulnerability, and thank you so much for taking the time out to do this for me.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Guys, tune in next time. Thanks for watching. All right. Bye.